All right, in our last lesson, we talked about demand. So on a graph, how demand looks, and a demand curve goes down, and it rises to the right and lowers to the left, and that was our rule of how the demand curve changed and moved. And there were 4 different reasons why demand could change. All right, now we're going to leave demand behind, but just for a little bit, and move on to supply. All right, and we need to figure out demand in order to establish what supply does. So supply can also be graphed, and a supply does make a curve, but it does not go down as demand does. We'll look at what curve supply makes here in a couple seconds. But what if I told you supply of everything is limited? Supply of everything is limited. Eventually, if people keep clicking that one item on their online shopping cart, eventually the company is going to run out of stock. So then you got that lovely, we're sorry, this item is unavailable. Please choose another something or other to put in your cart. All right. So remember, think back to the beginning of our unit when we talked about economics being the study of choices, right, in a world of unlimited wants and limited resources. So supply is kind of how we establish our resources. All right, we define supply in this unit as a producer's willingness to sell a good or service. All right, so how much you are willing to sell this one product for at all possible prices. So how much of a product, what quantity are you willing to sell at which prices? And the law of supply is the opposite of the law of demand. So as price increases, supply increases. The more money that I am getting per product, I'm willing to sell more of them, all right? So let's say that you sell, I don't know, toothbrushes, all right? And you originally charged $3 per toothbrush. You might be willing to sell 50 toothbrushes at that cost, making you $150. Now let's say that you increase the price to $5 a piece. I'm willing to sell probably 200 now. So now I'm going to get $1,000, all right? So as price increases, supply increases. The more money that I can make for my product, the more product I am willing to sell. All right, the supply curve goes the opposite direction of demand. All right, so the supply curve soars up like Superman. This is the amount that a producer is willing to sell at all possible prices. All right, and we put this on the top left corner of our graph. It says label. And remember, we label our y-axis price and our x-axis quantity always. All right, so this is the amount that we're willing to sell at all possible prices. All right, so yesterday we talked about how many of you would like to buy a piece of pizza at all possible prices. Now today, let's see how many of you would be willing to sell a slice of pizza for these prices. All right, at $0 on my y-axis, I'm willing to sell 0 slices of pizza because I'm not making any money. So the first dot is going to be right here in the bottom left corner. So let's say that at $5 a piece, about, I don't know, 10 of us would like to sell some pizza. So now we're here at this little dot. All right, and at $10 a piece, I'm willing to sell more. At $15 a slice, even more, and so on and so forth until we get to 20. All right, so the more money that I am making per product, the more product I'm willing to sell. It's as simple as that. All right, we had 4 reasons that demand changes, but there are 3 reasons that supply changes. All right, and we can remember these as PET, P-E-T. And the first one is production costs. All right, so let's say that you are a t-shirt maker. If the cost of cotton rises, the cost of your t-shirt that you make out of that cotton is going to rise as well, all right, because you don't want to lose any money. So your supply is going to be messed with. All right, so let's think about demand and supply are kind of like cause and effect as well. So let's say that our cotton prices rise, and you have to raise your t-shirt prices to keep making a profit, okay? The law of demand states that as price increases, demand decreases. So the more expensive that t-shirt is, the less people are willing to buy it. So then the less you are willing to supply because no one is buying your shirt. All right. The E in PET is for entrance or exit of a substitute. So you either have more or less competition. All right, like our Tony's Pizza supply from our last lesson. Let's say that Tony's Pizza that there's maybe a new pasta restaurant opening across town, all right? So since the demand is going to decrease, since people are going to the pasta restaurant instead of Tony's Pizza, if demand decreases, you are not going to keep cranking out the same amount of pizzas every day and just let them go to waste. So if demand decreases, then supply decreases also. All right, so cause and effect. All right, and our last one, T, is technology. All right, so this is like a new oven in a bakery, and you can make more product. All right, if you get a new double oven like Tony's Pizza did in our last lesson, Tony can make more pizzas for the same amount of cost. All right, so supply soars up like Superman. All right, and please graph this at the bottom of your note sheet. Soars up like Superman. We're going to continue to label our y-axis price and our x-axis quantity, and we are going to label this supply curve S1. So yes, well, not necessarily yesterday, in our last lesson, we talked about demand being D1. So now supply is S1. All right, and again, we rise to the right and we lower to the left. Okay, so the supply curve we can just think of as a big collection of dots. All right, so at all possible prices, how much am I willing to supply? All right, and if my quantity that I'm willing to supply increases, it's going to move to the right down here on our graph, which means it's going to shift the whole supply curve to the right. And the opposite is also the same, so it would shift our whole supply curve to the left. All right, here we go. Back to Tony's Pizza. What happens to the supply of Tony's Pizza after the cost of tomatoes goes up? And I'll give you a second to graph that out on your note sheet. All right, so hopefully you wrote down that after the cost of tomatoes goes up, the supply of Tony's Pizza is going to lower to the left. So Tony's Pizza, if you are not willing to move the price around on your pizza, all right, if the cost of tomatoes goes up, the cost of the sauce that I'm making and putting on my pizza is also going to go up. So I am willing to supply less at the same price. So my supply curve is going to lower to the left. And the reason is production costs. P for production costs. All right, here's our second example. What happens to the supply of Tony's Pizza after Michelangelo's closes? All right, so think on that and draw out your supply curve and list your reason underneath. So Michelangelo's is also a pizza joint. And if Michelangelo's and Tony's Pizza both sell pizza, then they're going to be in competition with one another. And if Michelangelo's closes, that is the exit of a substitute. All right, so now instead of having to split the community between Tony's and Michelangelo's, everybody is now going to just go to Tony's. So the demand for Tony's is going to increase. So then to keep up with that demand, the supply is going to have to increase. All right, so our whole demand curve is going to rise to the right. And this is your friendly reminder that your arrows rising to the right and lowering to the left should be parallel to your x-axis, parallel to the quantity axis. And again, the reason here would be exit of a substitute. All right, in our third example, what happens to the supply of Tony's Pizza after Tony buys a better, larger double oven? All right, so what happens to Tony's Pizza if he buys a new oven, a larger double oven? All right, hopefully you put down that the supply of Tony's Pizza is going to rise to the right, because now instead of being able to make 100 pizzas with this bigger double oven, Tony might be able to make 150 pizzas at a time. So his supply is going to rise to the right, and this reason would be technology. All right, so just as demand is elastic or inelastic, supply is the same way. All right, so the elasticity of supply is the extent to which supply changes when price changes. So if the price moves around, is supply going to have a steep curve or a shallow curve? Well, it depends on the product. All right, so if supply is elastic, a price change has a big effect on the price, okay, which means that our supply curve is going to be extremely shallow, right? And just like we said yesterday, the price, if we pick 2 points here on our line, the price is only going to increase a little bit, but the quantity is going to increase significantly, has a large effect on the price, okay? Has a big effect on the quantity. All right, so if supply is inelastic, a big price change has a small effect on supply. So we've already done our shallow elastic curve. So this is our steep inelastic curve, all right? And again, things that are wants are going to be elastic, and things that are needs are going to be inelastic, all right? Remember, we have an in for need and inelastic, all right? So we could have a huge price change here, but a very small quantity change here, all right? So big change in price is a small change in quantity, all right? And this has been supply.